Alright then, let's talk Zors. They're modular melee weapons introduced some time ago. Melee has seen a number of adjustments and reworks since the introduction of Zors, not to mention new weapons have been released. So, what's the best today? I'm Nick Engineer, let's solve a practical problem. I'm going to give you the best Zor options in each category, a comparison to the matching melee used in my earlier melee comparison video. I'll put a link in the description for you to catch up on that one if you've not seen it yet or want a refresher. And finally, I'll give you my recommendations for which Zors to build if you want to get all the mastery points and a variety of options without any duplicate strikes. Throughout this video, I'll be comparing the Zors assuming they have this general purpose hybrid build on them. Given the types of weapons that Zors can be, notably that they can't be glaives or gunblades, this is a fair way to compare them. Whatever limited variations you make, the trend remains functionally the same. The DPS figures I'll be showing is calculated from the Arsenal upgrade screen. Your actual DPS will of course be modified by your stance. And this is partly why comparing melees across types is somewhat harder to quantify. Don't forget as well, if you do find this video helpful, do remember to like and subscribe, it helps the channel, which helps me bring more guides to you. So, let's get into these categories. First up are daggers. There's one Zor that makes daggers, and that's the Bala. Bala daggers, and indeed all one-handed Zors, are simply best using the pay grip. Nothing else competes in any regard, as the damage loss from pay is minimal compared to the attack speed gain. In fact, looking at a graph of all grip and link combinations, we see 5 very clear peaks where we get the best ratios for DPS and status. Every other option is objectively inferior in one way or another. So going forwards, we're going to skip straight to these peaks because the lesson is the same, always these 5. Here then we see those top 5 combinations, and as I said all of them are the pay grip, alongside the Karist Prime from the melee comparison video. As is typical with modular weapons, Zors trade status for crits. Very notably here, the Vargeet 2J has significantly higher DPS than the Karist Prime. The Karist Prime has innate toxin, which can be converted to viral with just one mod, if you can accommodate that in your build. However, the Bala has 35% slash against the Karist Prime's 30%, giving the Bala a better potential slash output for most loadouts. Overall, I'd say that Bala, Pay, Vargeet 2J is the best available dagger. Next we have hammers. For this, your sole option is the Rabv strike. It is always best to combine this with the Seekalla grip for the attack speed. Just like with one-handed Zors using the pay grip, the Seekalla is simply best for two-handed Zors for basically all purposes. The token damage increase that the others offer simply doesn't make up for the attack speed loss. Once again, we have the top 5 options for the Rabv. This time I'm comparing it against a Kuva Shieldeg, with the stats showing a 25% bonus variant and a 60% bonus for the minimum and maximum that the Kuva Shieldeg can be. It's clear here that in terms of DPS and status, the Kuva Shieldeg is absolutely smashing it. The Rabv does have a substantially higher slash component, that's 35% versus the Shieldeg's 8.75, which means it is able to regain some ground specifically against the strongest Grineer. But the Kuva Shieldeg is just 65% higher in the DPS department with the general purpose build. Even with Exodia Arcanes, it's hard to find a reason to switch off the Shieldeg. Following on then, we have the Heavy Blade category, which once again has only one strike option, the Dokram. Once again, the undefeated two-handed grip is the Seekalla, and your choice is of the same 5 links, with the Vargeet 2J being the highest for DPS at the cost of status. This cost is a notable one, as compared to the Grand Prime, the DPS of the Dokram fully built is only about 1% higher, and yet 54% lower status per second. This means that the Grand Prime is almost certainly going to be able to keep up by making use of more viral and slash procs, or whichever elements you choose to use. Do be aware that the Grand Prime also has a base of 75% slash versus the Dokram's 50%, again favouring the Prime choice. However, if you've got the right Exodia Arcanes, the Dokram can keep up. Our 4th category are machetes, where we finally have more than one available strike to choose from. The Syath, Crunch and Rabv can all be machetes when paired with a one-handed grip, and as mentioned earlier, the only right answer there is the Pay Grip. In terms of base damage, there is precious little variation between these three strikes, but in the damage types, Syath boasts a 75% slash component, compared to the primarily impact Crunch and Rab-V. As it's generally unlikely that you'll need a machete for impact reasons, this means that the Syath has the better type split. What's more, the Syath has a slightly higher attack speed at base, bringing both the DPS and status per second above the other two options. So here we have the 5 key Syath components, alongside a comparison of the top damage Crunch and top damage Rab-V. And lastly, we have the Machete Wraith on the end. Now I didn't actually do a comparison of machetes in the melee comparison video, so let's do that now. Using the same method I used in the melee comparison video, but this time with the Syath, with the Pay Vargi 2J setup, we get a score of 68, which is just a tiny bit better than Distressor Prime and still in the lowest quarter scores in that comparison. Overall, it's a mediocre weapon class. In terms of damage then, the Machete Wraith is completely outclassed, despite it being the best non-Zor machete for damage. However, Machete Wraith does have much more status and a comparable slash percent to the top DPS Syath, meaning it can win out where you're able to make use of high slash and viral. That said, especially with Exodias, the Syath pretty much still wins. Up next is the Nikana category, for which the only option is the Sepfan. Once again, the Pay is the only grip to consider, and the usual links show up as the best ones. Sepfan has 65% slash at base, which compares poorly to Nikana Prime's 90% slash. Sepfan has around about 7.5% more DPS than the Nikana Prime, at the cost of 57% of its status per second. With that considered, the Nikana Prime is certainly the stronger Nikana when it comes to the base stats. With Exodia Arcanes, you can turn it around somewhat, but it's still an uphill battle to justify Sepfan over Nikana Prime in most cases. Now for polearms, they're the most populated category for Zors, with 5 variants available, all of them best using the Seekalla grip. The Syath, Detat, Crunch, Miwan and Plague Kripath strikes all become polearms when they're two-handed. Syath again has a 75% slash at base, with Detat only 40%, Crunch 30% and Miwan 40%. By damage type alone, this puts the Syath superior out of these 4. However, the Plague Kripath, which sadly isn't always available, offers 23% slash and 30% viral. So stats wise, here's the spread of 5 links on the Plague Kripath, compared against the top DPS versions for the other 4 strikes. And on the end we've got their non-Zor competitor, the Guandao Prime. While there's not a huge amount of difference between each top Zor, the Crunch and Miwan are simply outclassed. The Detat, despite slightly higher DPS and status, has a much lower slash percentage than the Syath, meaning it scales less well against a Grineer. The Plague Kripath, in trading some of its slash for viral, can use alternative mod options rather than having to add in the viral with the elemental mods. And on top of this, it has the highest paper DPS with the general purpose build, making for a very compelling polearm option. This all said, the Guandao Prime is just slightly lower DPS than the Plague Kripath, and better than all the other Zors for pure DPS, and it has a significantly higher status per second, alongside its 70% base slash percentage. This means that the perfect choice for you will naturally depend on what options you actually have access to. If you cannot obtain the Plague Kripath, you may need to settle for Syath for slash or Detat for raw damage. And the Guandao Prime remains pretty great, unless and until you have Exodia Arcanes to force it out. Next then we have the Rapiers, for which Zors have 2 strike options, Detat and Plague Kripath. As before, Pay Grip, best grip. And just as with the polearms, the Detat has a 40% slash percentage, compared against the Plague Kripath's 23% slash, 30% viral. Also like with the polearms, Plague Kripath is substantially better DPS, though it's just slightly behind on status per second compared to the Detat. The non-Zor competitor for this group is the Distressor Prime, which has a lower DPS and base damage than either strike option in exchange for more status per second. Given that Distressor Prime is only 18% slash, it's pretty much just worse than the Zors, making it pretty easy to say the preferred rapier is Plague Kripath, followed by Detat. Our next melee type are Scythes, with 2 options in the Dokram and the so far unmentioned Plague Kiwa. Again, both using the Pay Grip because it's the absolute best one-handed option. Interestingly, the Plague Kiwa ends up with a markedly lower DPS than the Dokram with all links, leaving the Dokram 12% ahead in that area. This is compensated by Plague Kiwa having higher status per second and using 30% slash, 23% viral, instead of Dokram's 50% slash. Given both the difficulty in obtaining the Plague Kiwa most times and the stat difference, I'd say the Dokram is the better of the two for Scythes. Comparing these two to Reaper Prime then, the top damage Dokram has around 16% more paper DPS in exchange for 57% lower status, and the Reaper Prime boasts a 70% slash at base. But then the stance mod Reaping Spiral can often force slash procs on itself, so the difference isn't as pronounced in status. If you have a status supporting secondary, the Dokram easily wins. Looking on to staves then, we've got 4 strike options, being the Bala, Ultha, Sepfarn and Plague Kiwa. Again of course, all of them should be using the Seekalla grip. Here, the Plague Kiwa comes in with the highest DPS, whilst also having that same 30% slash and 23% viral in its base damage split. This compares to the Sepfarn's 65% slash, Ultha's 50% and Bala's 30%. This means if the Plague Kiwa isn't available, then the next best option is to go for the Sepfarn. And here we can compare the 5 top link options for the Sepfarn, alongside the top damage setup for the other 3 Zors, and lastly the non-Zor competitor Typedo Prime. Typedo Prime lacks a significant chunk of DPS in comparison, traded out for roughly double or so the status depending on your strike choice. The Typedo Prime does have 80% slash in its favour, but still lacking the damage hurts it considerably, so the Zors are overall a better choice. And for our last category we have the swords, of which you can choose either Ultha or Miwan, naturally again using the Pay Grip. Ultha beats the Miwan in DPS, attack speed, status per second and slash proportion, making it almost entirely superior to the Miwan. Here we have a comparison of the best 5 links as throughout this whole video, still the best for swords too, alongside the top DPS version of the Miwan, and their competitor, the non-Zor weapon the Dakra Prime. Dakra Prime has substantially higher status and slash percentage, 80% slash versus Ultha's 50% to be precise, for a razor thin drop in DPS. As it turns out, if you have additional gladiator mods on your Warframe or Sentinel, the Dakra Prime overtakes the Ultha as a sword owing to the higher crit multiplier of the Dakra Prime. So Dakra Prime is marginally better than the Zors in normal usage, but once you start adding in the Exodia Arcanes, the Zors start winning again. Now that is all of the Zor combinations available, pitted alongside their non-Zor counterparts for comparison's sake. If you're looking to build just one of each strike for mastery points, while still covering most weapon types a Zor can be, then I recommend using the following setup. For all of these, use the Vargeet 2J for maximum DPS, or Vargeet J2 if you want to make greater use of status procs, as you're trading then 50% more status for 15% less DPS. For the strikes, you want to pair Bala with Pei to make a dagger, Syath with Pei for machetes, Detat with Seekalla for a polearm, Dokram with Pei for a scythe, Crunch with Seekalla as a polearm. This is mastery fodder if you're also getting the Detat, but it beats having it as a machete. Go with Miwan using Pei for a sword, Ultha using Seekalla for a staff, Rabvi using Seekalla for a hammer, which you'll probably shelve once you've got the Kuva shield egg, and Sepfarm using Pei as an Ikana. And once you have access to the Plague strikes, Plague Kiwa can be a staff using Seekalla, whilst Plague Kripath will do well as a rapier using Pei. The only missing category out of these then is the Heavy Blades, for which you can make a Dokram duplicate if you want to round out the full set. Alrighty then, so you've got your top options for making Zors for every category. In a nutshell, use Pei for one-handed, Seekalla for two-handed, Vargeet 2J link for max DPS, or use Vargeet J2 for 50% more status at the cost of 15% of your DPS. As for the strikes, pick the one that best suits you, or go mad and get them all like I did. I hope this video has helped you. If it has, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe as well. And as always, get parts, guild Zors, and fight well, Tenno.